epigenetics play a role in our health, from our risk of heart disease to cancer to mental health issues. But our next guest says trauma can be passed down in our DNA as well. Dr. Steele from Holistic Family Practice in Virginia Beach is here to explain. Hey, Erica, how you doing?
Hey, I'm well. How are you?
Good. Now, I hadn't heard that, so explain what that means, trauma being passed in our DNA.
So this is a relatively new frontier in healthcare, and being an innovator, I'm always looking at, and also always wanting to find the cause. Like I always want to find the root cause as a naturopath. And so what they've studied, as they've become more aware of genetics and methyl genetics, which are all of the enzymatic processes that make up the DNA and move everything in the body is structured around that. They found that there's actually transgenerational trauma that is passed down from generation to generation, which I find just to be fascinating. And so that impacts the genes of the DNA of children coming in. And then as we know through epigenetics, the environment to which we put the genes in, that leaves people more susceptible to chronic disease, et cetera. So it's really we're like at the very beginning of understanding all the impacts of this on our health, but I think it's fascinating, and I definitely wanted to share it with your viewers today.
Yeah, that is fascinating. It's called ancestral trauma. So, for somebody like me who's African American, so are you saying my ancestors who may have been slaves in the past passed that down through my DNA?
Correct. And I have African genetics, obviously, as well, and Native American, right? And so I got it kind of both, genocide as well as the impact of slavery. On my mother's side, and this is what got me intrigued with this, on my mother's side suffered with mental health issues that was passed down generation to generation, to the point that my mother unfortunately suffers from DID, which is dissociative identity disorder. So that kind of already started getting me, and growing up around that really got me inspired to kind of learn more about how the genetics impact, because of course I didn't want it to affect me and impact me. I watched this incredibly brilliant woman just over the years degrade further and further and further. Upon research and upon learning, I understood that the effects of slavery had negatively impacted the men the protectors in the African lineage from slavery, et cetera. And then there was impacts of sexual abuse and things like that impacted her DNA as well. So all around her neurotransmitters, and even mine, when I got my EEG done, I got my brain map, that whole schizophrenic network was all impacted and affected because of that. Now, because I was aware and I was educated and I was able to do something about it, I didn't have to be a victim to my genes. I was able to overcome it. So it's pretty fascinating, the power that we have now that genetics are coming out and we're able to really put all these pieces together.
My goodness, so it's not just the environment that you grow in, but you also have to consider the DNA. So how do you avoid this, or how do you get past it like you've done?
Yeah, so I did an EEG, which is a brain map. I've got some excellent professionals that I work with that are in the allopathic world that can do this as well. So we do EEGs, we look at that. We also look at like your 23andMe or your ancestry results as well. We look at those and we start to stabilize, in addition to doing other like CBT style treatments, EFT. I throw in some Kundalini in there, some meditation, some guided imagery, as well as really supporting what we call the HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal. Because the adrenals, when you come in with trauma, they also found this even with Holocaust DNA, Jewish DNA, that the cortisol was coming in low. Cortisol is the stress hormone, and just because it had already been exhausted. So making sure we support those nutritionally, supplementally. I mean, it's really a very incredible time. And I think some of the current events are really re-traumatizing people that already have trauma stored within their DNA. So now is really the time to really look at this and push this frontier forward in healthcare and in medicine throughout.
Well,
and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
Dr. Erica Steele, it is fascinating. We're out of time. Real quick, how can people find you?
So all over the place. They can call our office. They can look me up online. We do have classes that are coming up where we can explore. So if this message calls to anybody to really explore their trauma, feel free. And also too, because lifestyle has so much to do with it, you know, a lot of times people that have been traumatized also experience chronic disease and don't take care of themselves. We also have a lot of healthy programs to help people get back on track. And of course, as we're doing that, all this stuff comes up in the midst of everything. So the webinar dates are June 20th, June 24th, June 29th, and I look forward to seeing everyone there.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Steele.